Good morning, Cowboys Nation. Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Block podcast. I am your host, David Howman. I come in here with my co-host, Chris Halling. Brandon Clemens is not with us this week, but we're coming to you this Wednesday morning, the day before Halloween, to talk about something that is scarier than any costume you could ever come up with, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. They came off of their bye week, and they lost to the 49ers, something they love to do lately. And they put us through a roller coaster of emotions in the way that they did it. But before we get into all of that and breaking down everything with this team that in their own right are breaking down themselves, Chris, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What are the vibes? Are you excited for Halloween, or have the Cowboys just ruined it for you?
I mean, I'm as excited as someone my age can be. I'm sure you can relate to this, David, since you're a little bit more more experienced in life than I am. But once
It's
you
a
reach
great way to put it.
yeah, I'm about to say once you reach this age, you kind of hit a point where you can't go up to people's houses and ask for candy. Instead, you're the person handing out candy.
Mm.
But yeah, I'll probably dress up in a costume and just sit outside and in the front yard and just hand out candy or something like that. Because I mean, there's not really much to do. But no, the Cowboys haven't taken away any Halloween spirit in terms of eating candy. If anything, their performances make me want to eat more and more candy because I'm more sad, and that's what I like to do when I'm sad is just eat candy. So yeah, I'll probably eat lots of Twix bars, Three Musketeers, all the basics, the Reese's, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I mean it's not the best situation for the Cowboys, but hopefully they get a little bit healthier this week and maybe they'll stand a chance next week.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they kind of have to get healthier at this
Yeah,
point.
they don't. It'll end
It's
up.
crazy. I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I really want to hammer home on this Halloween thing, though. Uh, are you in a neighborhood where like you have like people will come by and trick or treat? Because I remember, a couple of years ago, I lived in an apartment, so I never had to worry about trick or treaters. Now I live in a suburban neighborhood. Uh, People are coming up, and what I do is because I have a dog who hates the sound of people on his porch knocking on the door. He
Yeah.
goes nuts. So I just turn off the porch light and nobody ever comes by. Um, and that, I don't get any trick or treaters, but it's for a good cause because it's for the sake of my little puppy. But what's the vibe for you where you're at? And what are
Yeah.
you dressing up as? What's your costume?
So, I haven't actually spent time to go buy a costume, but I have a really, really good Pennywise costume. It like looks
Ooh,
really, really good. I'm a tall guy too, so it's scary. I get a red balloon and everything. So I'll probably just sit outside in my Pennywise costume with a couple friends, and we'll probably just talk and like maybe drink a little bit and eat candy and I don't know, just hang out. I am in a situation now where I can be outside and children will come up and ask for candy and stuff. Um, so that's my plan currently. We do have a dog, but typically the dog is upstairs where there is no access to seeing outside on Halloween because she will also freak out. But she'll have to live. We'll take her on a walk the next day or something to make up for it. Yeah.
nice. That's a good deal. My dog, he just likes to be a pain. I'll note on the 4th of July with the fireworks and everything, dude is fine. Like he will sleep
Yeah.
soundly through the night. You knock on the door, or even if I bump a spoon into the into the table and it sounds like someone's knocking, he goes crazy. Fireworks he doesn't care about so much, but uh, the other thing that he really hates is when I watch the Cowboys because it puts me in a bad mood, and he can always sense when I'm in a bad mood. It's like every single Sunday, I feel like he's now coming up to me like, "What's wrong?" And this past week with the 49ers, of course they lost. They went through a roller coaster because the first half looked decent. I mean, it wasn't good, but I mean, they were up 10-6. The 49ers offense hadn't scored a single touchdown. They couldn't really move the ball. And then that third quarter happened. They get outscored 21-0 in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And then the fourth quarter, they get a few touchdowns. Suddenly it's a close game. And then they get the ball back with like 3 minutes left. 4 straight incompletions,
Yeah,
including Kevontae Turpin dropping a ball, a deep shot down the sideline, which, in
would have
fairness,
been
would have been a tough catch, but one
yeah,
that hit him on the hands it was, I think, probably the best throw that Dak Prescott had all night in this game, and what I would say was otherwise a pretty poor game for him. Um, what were your vibes going through this game? Like, did you ever like buy in and believe, oh, they might actually pull this off?
um, I actually had some faith heading into the second half. I picked them to lose, but when they were up, I was like, okay, well, it's actually looking like somewhat of a game, and that was really just because the defense was playing much better than I expected, and I thought the offense would turn it up a little bit. But without having the best running back on their team in the backfield, which is a whole conspiracy that would take a whole another episode to dive into, but without having Rico Dowdle back there, the offense just wasn't doing anything. Dak Prescott, I mean, he turned it on later in the game, but I mean, the Cowboys and him specifically are the king of fake comebacks. I feel like we always have these situations where the game's out of reach and then they give us false hope, kind of like that Ravens game where, things feel like, oh, it could be actually happening. And then they just fall, just short. Yeah, I think that I mean, I wasn't very happy with what I saw from Dak Prescott. And again, I think that this is the hardest situation he's been in a really long time. Uh, the last time was probably, I think, the 2018 season when they started the season off with Allen
Yeah.
Hurns and yeah, it was just a tough situation for
Deontay
him.
Thompson.
Exactly. Deontay Thompson. I was trying to think of the name for him. I wanted to say Deontay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like that was just a tough season. I mean, it was a tough start for him until he got Amari Cooper. But that was a younger Dak Prescott. And, even in this situation, there were a lot of situations that occurred. Like both of his turnovers, I think the first one he gets a little leeway on because, I mean, he did have Nick Bosa immediately in his face, which makes it, more
Yeah.
difficult. And I think that Turpin could have been open if he had had a couple more seconds. Still, I don't think it's the best decision to just throw it up there when it was double coverage, but that's one thing. The second interception he threw on the sideline to CD Lamb, I mean, that was just his fault. I mean, it's just that
Yeah.
simple.
You
I
got to
mean,
throw that one
incredible
away.
interception. It was an incredible interception. It was a difficult interception, but in that situation, yeah, it should go out of bounds. It shouldn't even be in the field of play. And there were a couple of instances where Chris Collinsworth was talking about footwork for Dak and how it seems off. And to me, when you're in your ninth season, I think that when you're in your ninth season, especially as the highest paid player in NFL history, I don't think footwork should be a thing that should still really be holding you back. And I think that has something to say about the pass protection and as well as his cast around him. But it was one of those games where I was hoping that Dak could elevate the team around him, especially when the defense was playing better than expected.
Mhm.
And I understand that the defense allowed 21 points in the third, but Dak made it a little bit easier for the 49ers offense to score in the third with his turnover.
Yeah.
And then right after the turnover, they had a 3-and-out as well. So, I mean, the offense was giving the defense no favors. And like, I think the big thing is that the offense needs to be the one carrying this defense at this moment in
Mhm.
time without all their stars, and they can't do it. It's kind of like whenever Cooper Rush had to step in for the Cowboys. It was the defense that was carrying the offense, and they
Yes.
were giving them situations, where Cooper Rush didn't have to do too much. He just had to not blow it, and that's what Cooper Rush was able to do. This situation, the defense is missing Micah Parsons, Deron Bland, DeMarcus Lawrence. Dak Prescott needs to just do enough to where he has to pull a defense that's doing just enough and not blowing it and keeping them in the game. And it seems like Dak's not only hurting, he's not only not helping the defense, but he's hurting the defense as well with his play in that game. But it's something that's continued for a while now. I think his kryptonite is the 49ers. He just can't get over them. I don't know if it's the defensive scheme, their players. I don't know if it's I mean, I'm not sure specifically what it is, but he just doesn't play well against them. But yeah, no, I mean, as someone who had CD Lamb in fantasy, I was excited about the way that the second half or the fourth quarter was going. I never fully bought into it. I have to admit, I never once, even when they were coming back, I thought, oh, I mean, honestly, I thought the defense was gonna allow them to drive down the field when there was about 3-4 minutes left and they needed to stop. I was like, oh, okay. Like the defense has played so great and the offense has played, terrible. Now that the offense is playing great, the defense is going to play terrible because that's typically how it goes for Cowboys
Mhm.
football. They can't be on the same page at the same time. But they made the stop. And one thing that bothered me about that last drive was they didn't run the ball once. And like, here's my thing. I understand that running the football is hard, but I mean, when you're not getting any yards, I mean, 1st and 10 incompletion, 2nd and 10 incompletion. You're suddenly at 3rd and 10, and that's hard. And then you get another incompletion, 4th and 10. It's a very difficult first down to get. It's
Yeah.
not like there was only a minute left and they had no timeouts. There was plenty of
Right.
time for them to mix in different play calls. They weren't in a pass only situation. And I think if they were really comfortable in the running game that they had with Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook, if they had felt comfortable at that moment in time, then they would have ran the football. And I mean, to me, it's a disappointing game, but it's kind of what I expected. It didn't come the way I expected it, but I didn't expect them to win.
Yeah, I think the running back situation is fascinating because,
Yeah.
of course, against the Lions before they went into the bye, the game before against the Steelers, which, by the way, that win over the Steelers feels so long ago now. It was 3 weeks ago.
Good looking win.
And that was kind of a high point. And you look now where the Steelers are, like the Cowboys beat them in Pittsburgh. Like that's something.
Well, that was an impressive win,
Yeah.
especially
And
given the situation of
all
not having
downhill since then.
players.
But Rico
Yeah.
Dowdle had the best game of his career. He was like legitimately good. Not great, not Derrick Henry, but like good.
Good.
And
Yeah.
like it was very, very clear in that game, if Rico Dowdle's your RB1 and you bring in Zeke for just short yardage, you bring in Hunter Lipke for pass protection, right? Maybe you sprinkle some Deuce Vaughn in there as kind of your stat back kind of guy, but Dowdle's the number one guy.
Yeah.
And then Zeke goes and publicly says, I don't like my role. I'm not happy. There's this whole narrative that comes out of nowhere of Zeke wants to be more involved. And then Zeke gets super involved. They feed him against the Lions. He's terrible. The run game suddenly evaporates. And it was like going into the bye, it felt like, yeah, there's no question now Dowdle's your top guy.
Yeah.
And then coming out of the bye, it's like, oh, Dalvin Cook's coming. Well, which running back's going to be inactive? And then suddenly, right before kickoff, hey, Rico, out of nowhere, like he's super sick now. He can't go.
And he's signing autographs in pregame when they're walking out.
Yeah, he's signing autographs. People saw him in, like, beat reporters were saying, like, we saw him in the locker room. Like, he seemed fine. Like, it must have just happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I think that's their way of. I think that if they were going to make Dalvin Cook active, then the easy decision would have been to make Ezekiel Elliott inactive, especially if you're keeping Hunter Lipke in the lineup.
Not the easy decision, the smart decision.
Yeah, exactly. The smart decision. Oh, yeah, no, it's not the easy decision because it didn't happen. But the smart decision would have been to keep Hunter Lipke in and then make Zeke inactive. But unfortunately, I think that I don't think Jerry wants to make Zeke inactive, and I think that there may have been a call made to, hey, sit. Yeah. Which is, if that's what happened and they really sat Rico, then that just shows that they're not actually about winning this season because Rico is clearly their best running back option. He runs with more explosion than anybody else in the locker room.
Yeah.
And what I saw from Ezekiel Elliott, I thought Ezekiel Elliott had a couple impressive runs where he gained more yards than he should have, and like that was purely off strength and toughness, which is what he can bring at this stage of his career. But him and Dalvin both kind of brought, I felt like, the same lack of explosion, really. It felt like, I don't think that they necessarily were horrific, but they weren't game changers by any means. They didn't provide any big spark plays that could have made Dak's job easier. They weren't consistent bell cow, hand the ball off and, make Dak's job easier. And, I know that you're not about, paying big running backs, and I understand that. But even if you go running back by committee, you have to be able to consistently run the football to make that work. It's not even about who has the ball. It's about just the running game. It's important for every quarterback to have a successful running game, especially when you don't have receivers either outside of one and two options with it, which is CD and Jake Ferguson, which, by the way, I don't think Jake Ferguson's getting the ball enough either at this point. But besides that point, like, they're making Dak's job so hard because it's not one or the other. It's both. He doesn't have good receiving options outside of CeeDee Lamb, and he doesn't have good running options as well. So it's really a one-man show with a sprinkle of Jake Ferguson every now and then. So I think this offseason they have to figure it out. I saw that the Baltimore Ravens made a good win now move, and they brought in Deontay Johnson from the Panthers, which they didn't really give up much at all. It was just a pick swap. Essentially nothing. It was essentially nothing, and I
think the moral of the story is trade with the Panthers because after Brian Burns, after
Yeah, they don't give up
Deontay
much.
Johnson, they're going to you're
They
going to
don't ask
swindle
for
them
much.
easily. Even
Yeah.
Stephen Jones could take advantage of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a trade to me that, and here's the thing, I'm not saying Deontay Johnson fixes this team. I don't think that
No.
they suddenly become a Super Bowl contender trading for him, but he's easily a better option than what they have on the field outside of CeeDee Lamb right now. And he would immediately, I feel like, elevate the passing game and, to just get a pick swap. And it would have made sense too, because he was an expiring contract as well. So there wouldn't have been a lot of,
Mhm.
but now, with this news coming out that Stephon Diggs, suffers a torn ACL, which is really unfortunate for him. I think that may open the door for a big headline signing that is all what Jerry Jones is about. He's about making headlines and stuff, and instead of trading for a wide receiver who can make an immediate impact now, I think he could maybe sign Stephon Diggs in the offseason and pair him with Trevon Diggs. I mean, it was talked about, a whole trading situation, and they didn't do it, but now, unfortunately, and I'm not saying it's a great thing at all that he got hurt. It's very unfortunate, and it sucks too because we're gonna miss out on another Diggs versus
Mhm.
Diggs matchup. We have
Yeah.
missed out on it last season with the Bills because Trevon Diggs tore his ACL, and now we're gonna miss out on it this season because Stephon Diggs tore his ACL. But I think that coming off of a torn ACL, his market may not be as strong as Stephon Diggs' market's used to, and I could see Jerry kind of sliding in for that headline grab and signing. And too, that's not really a move that I think moves the needle as much as, the name Stephon Diggs would make you think. But, I think that that's a situation where, if they do that, Jerry's going to be like, see, I told you I made a big move. I was able
Yeah.
to bring Stephon Diggs, and it'll be like a 1 year, $8 million deal that's
Right.
incentive heavy, maybe, it wouldn't be anything crazy. So I don't
It'll
know.
be
That's
like when he traded for
early.
Brandon Cooks.
Exactly. Like that's my early hot off-season take, but I don't even think it's that hot, honestly. But yeah, no, just talking about how bad our receiving room is just brought me down that rabbit hole. But yeah, no, the receiving room's not good. So that's
Yeah. Well, and with the receiver room, like what fascinates me is going into the bye where I was at with this receiver room, and I think Troy Aikman put it maybe a little harshly, but pretty accurately that these receivers just were not running their routes with great effort,
yeah,
and primarily CeeDee Lamb being the number one culprit of that.
yeah. I think
And
CeeDee Lamb runs routes.
their connection has not been good. And
I know.
then they come out in this one,
Mhm.
and I was kind of the mindset like if those two can get that right, it opens up so much more for this offense. They got it right in this game. Like they clearly are on the same page,
Exactly.
but it didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Devontae Turpin is dropping passes. He's fumbling the ball. I will say Jalen Tolbert had another good game. He has consistently stacked
yeah.
good
He's been
game after good game, but Jalen Tolbert is still not. I mean, their
not a
defense
wide
isn't
receiver
gonna.
too.
They're
Exactly.
not
He's
going
not
to
a
spend their resources trying to stop him. Like
exactly.
he's reliable, and I mean he caught all three of his targets in this game. He has Dak's trust absolutely, and I think
Yeah.
rightfully so. Um,
I
but
think taking Jalen.
they're not
I think
getting Jake Ferguson enough
yeah.
touches to your point for them to have to really worry about him. They're able to bracket CeeDee Lamb, and even when CeeDee does go off like he did in this game, it's not a whole lot. And on top of that, you've now got Dak Prescott, who very clearly there's something off there. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's footwork. I don't know if it's mental. What all it is. Um, he's not who he was last year,
Yeah.
and he's there's just too many mistakes he's made, and some of it has not been him. Like obviously, Jalen Brooks falling down as he throws the ball to him. There's several miscommunications with CeeDee Lamb. Like you can attribute a lot of these things to factors outside of his control, and in a larger degree to what you said. This is probably the worst, supporting cast he's had since the beginning of the 2018 season, and he wasn't so good there either. But still, you're getting paid $60 million a year. You're, the longest tenured quarterback with your team. You got to be able to make up for it on some level, and he hasn't this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was my, big problem is like, again, Dak Prescott, I think is a top, I think he's a, uh, I think he's a top 10 quarterback. I'd put him around 8 or 9 personally. And I think that that's fair. But my thing is like, to be the highest paid quarterback. And I understand that changes whenever a big player is up for a new extension. So he won't be the highest paid quarterback probably past
Mhm.
next season. I'm sure that someone will get a big contract that passes that. But I mean, with that said, it's come to a point now where Dak Prescott has to show that when he's when he's put in difficult situations, he at least elevates the team around him to, at least stay in games. And it's felt like, it felt like even against the Steelers too, his decision making kind of made it harder for that game, because again, the defense came out and played surprisingly well
Yeah.
that game. I actually think
But
I
then in
think
the fourth quarter, he put
exactly.
on his Superman cape
Yeah,
and looked like the Dak we all knew. But
yeah,
there, like, it was an uneven game. He had like some of his lowest lows, and then it was like, okay, there's the Dak we all know. But
exactly.
normally he's pretty consistent throughout a whole game, and he hasn't had I
Mhm.
don't think a single game all year this year where he's consistently looked like himself from start to finish.
Yeah, yeah. Um m One point I wanna point out as well is that even though, this defense, it doesn't look like the Dan Quinn defense by any means, but I'd have to say I'm pretty pleased with how Mike Zimmer is coaching this defense, all
Mhm.
things considered. He's having a rough time right now having guys on the field, but I mean, considering the guys who he has to play on the field, I think the defense has actually played pretty well. I
Yeah.
think all things considered. I mean, obviously they didn't play well against the Lions, but I mean, like that's a great offense, and
But also, the
not a
Titans
lot
have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they just
exactly,
got
exactly. The Lions are
granted,
just
the Lions started in the red zone for half of their drives in
uh
that game, but
exactly. I mean,
they got bludgeoned by the Lions. I mean, that's not a
I
bad
think the
offense.
Lions are just a legit offense, and they're
Yeah.
gonna give a lot of defenses trouble. But I'm a little hopeful that when Micah comes back and Deron Bland makes his season debut and all these things, that this defense can start performing at a high level again. But I wanted to go back real quick to when we were talking about the route running of CeeDee Lamb. One thing I've noticed is that I actually think that CeeDee Lamb can be a good route runner. I think he can actually be a great route runner. The thing is, I think, and what I've seen, at least going back and looking at film, is he runs these routes differently. I feel like when he's expecting the ball, when
Mhm.
he's expecting to get the football, he's running at an elite route running level where he's making defenders miss a little bit, like he's creating separation, he's doing these things. But it seems like when he knows that he's like probably not the primary target, it seems like he's running them a little bit slower or with a little bit less, cut and explosion. And I don't want to, like make an attack on his effort and impact, because I mean, like we saw what a social media person said about Trevon Diggs, and then he lashed out at him. I don't want CeeDee Lamb lashing out at me the same way, but at the same time, it's just something that I've noticed in terms of like, I think that CeeDee Lamb can be a good route runner, but it just doesn't seem like he's running great routes every single play of the game, and that's what separates one of the I feel like that's what separates him from like even like a Justin Jefferson or someone who's
Mhm.
clearly the best receiver in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I think you bring up two really good points there, both on CeeDee Lamb and also mentioning a certain
Yeah,
jealous
situation.
defender. Um, this team this team is soft,
Yeah,
and going into the bye week, and I wrote all about this on Blogging the Boys with an article that's coming out Wednesday morning. So be looking out for that. But going into the bye, Mike McCarthy gave his players a whole list of questions of like, what do we need to do to fix this? According to reports, like Dak Prescott, Jordan Lewis, among others, came back and said, we got to get some more team drills because too many people are slacking in the individual drills. And since we're not there as a group, us veterans are not there to hold them accountable. Well, they come out in this game. First drive, they go, 5 plays. They got one first down, but then they punted. Mike McCarthy said in his press conference on Monday, they had a lot of miscommunication on that opening drive. That's not great. That's not what you want to see when you have
yeah.
this whole come to Jesus moment.
But it also would be nice too if he stopped electing to receive every single game and not getting anything out of it.
Yes,
You would
there's
assume that
there's,
at one point he
there's
learned.
absolutely an issue there,
Yeah.
but there's no focus. There's no mental toughness, and I'll commend the players, the coaches for coming out ready to play this game. They played well in the first half. Not perfect, but they played well. They proved they could win that game. And then they came out in the second half and just completely blew it. Some of it was absolutely coaching. The coaching staff did not have a good adjustment for what the 49ers threw at them differently in the second half, but also the players did not step up. Like you still gotta step up and play the game regardless of what the game plan is. And we saw some not so great routes from CeeDee Lamb. We saw some shoddy catch ability from Kevontae Turpin. Poor running, poor run blocking, poor blocking from Terrence Steele, especially in pass pro and in the run blocking game. And just everything kind of fell apart, and the team had no real response. And I think the thing that where I'm at right now is it is very, very painfully obvious at this point that Cowboys need a new head coach. And not necessarily because I think Mike McCarthy is terrible and bad and doesn't deserve to have a job. Because I've been one of the stronger McCarthy defenders since he got to Dallas. But this team is not listening to him right now. Yeah. And nothing was more evident than that to me than right after the game when Trevon Diggs emerged from the locker room, still wearing his uniform, still wearing his pads, and runs up to local reporter Mike Leslie, who had tweeted during the game. There was a video of, George Kittle had a big catch and run. Trevon Diggs was away from the play, but it looked like as he kind of came up, he wasn't really running full speed. Didn't really make a huge effort to tackle George Kittle. And Mike Leslie tweeted, "What is Trevon Diggs doing on this play?" Trevon came up and was like yelling at him, screaming at him and everything, and confronting him. And Mike Leslie, to his credit, did not back down. He was like, "I'm asking a question. You want to give me an answer?"
Yeah.
But the fact that you are a successful player and one of the supposed leaders of this team, at least on defense, and you get beat like that, and the first thing you do is go into the locker room, pull out your phone.
What bothered me
Mike Leslie didn't tag him. He went onto Twitter and searched his name to see what people were saying about him, sees somebody saying something mean about him, and says, "I'm going to go confront that guy right now." Your priorities are in the wrong place. And of course, the reason that this is such a big red flag for me is because 2 weeks ago, Jerry Jones goes on the radio and threatens to fire a bunch of radio hosts because they were asking him not nice questions. And, there was a whole, we all talked about that, forever and a day. But this is very, very similar to that. And, there's an old saying that that your coach and your culture is working when your players start to sound like the head coach.
Yeah.
The players are sounding like the owner. They're not sounding like the head coach.
Yeah.
And even more telling was on Tuesday or on Monday in the press conference, they asked Mike McCarthy about it. And he, gave the response you would expect from a guy like Mike McCarthy of like, "We can't have that. You got to be better than that. Like, that's not acceptable. That's not how we want to represent this organization." They asked Jerry Jones about it on Tuesday, and he said, "I got no problem with it."
Yeah.
Jerry Jones has undercut his coaching staff every step of the way, especially this season. He has, whether you think Mike McCarthy is a good coach or not, he has put Mike McCarthy in a no-win scenario. He has set him up to fail, and now he's failing. And the players, by and large, are not listening to him. They're not tuning in to play for him. So I don't think that a new coach is coming in and changing anything because Jerry Jones is still going to be the one that these players listen to at the end of the day. But it's very, very clear. Mike McCarthy's not turning this thing around at this point. I would be shocked if he was able to. It would be very impressive if he was able to. But that's where I'm at right now with, and this Trevon Diggs incident, I think, was kind of the cherry on top moment of like, these things need to change.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, my thing is, my biggest shock about the whole thing wasn't even him and what he said to Mike in terms of like confronting him. It's just that he did it that quickly after the game. If he had like responded on Twitter, maybe later in the evening when he was on the bus or on the plane, he was looking at his phone, then it would have been like, okay, whatever. I mean, like maybe Mike didn't understand what was going on, and maybe Trevon could explain it. Maybe there's a situation because I mean, at the very beginning of the play, it's obvious that it is man coverage, and Kittle's not his man. But the problem is that it appears that Trevon's giving no effort to actually tackle George Kittle, and
Yeah.
maybe Trevon was, I mean, like maybe he was taking a conservative approach to make sure he took the right angle. I don't know. I mean, like maybe that could have been his rebuttal, saying, "Hey, like." I was trying to get myself in a position to where I could get him and not just, run at him from the side and, he breaks the tackle, blah, blah, blah. But I think the more telling thing is it happened immediately after the game. I mean, it was like the
A few
game.
minutes after.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I was still putting finishing touches on an article about the game when that tweet came out that Mike Leslie said that. So I was like, this happened very quickly. So it's not even like it was an hour later whenever they had finished talking to media and they had changed. Like he was still in his full uniform, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that means the first thing he did after a tough loss like that on the road to your rival, who it should really, piss you off at this point that you've lost what 4 games in a row now to your rivals. I mean, it's been complete dominance by the 49ers in terms of this rivalry. And the first thing you do is you go on Twitter and you look up your name. So, I mean, and that's the thing. I think Trayvon's had an all right season. He definitely hasn't had the season that he had, when he had 11 interceptions. But I mean, I think overall he's had an all right season. He hasn't been getting burnt as much in coverage as he's been burnt in the past. I
And
think
for
his
what it's worth, in this game, he didn't allow a single completion
yeah,
in the whole game. He had a very good game.
exactly. I think the biggest critique that I've seen around Trayvon this season is that it seems like he's a little soft when it comes to tackling, and he doesn't really want to go up and make the tackle. And maybe that's, just coming off of a season-ending injury, maybe he's a little cautious about putting his body on the line because he doesn't want to miss that time again. And, in this situation when the Cowboys are already down so many players, the last thing they need is to lose Trevon Diggs. So, it's kind of like Tyler Lockett, where I'm not sure if you've seen it, but he slides after he catches the ball almost every single play. There's a whole compilation on YouTube where the second he catches the ball, he falls. And then he tries to pick up yards like on the ground as opposed to running with the football. And they've asked about this, like, why are you doing this? He's like, I think availability is more important than, maybe 5 or 10 yards I can give you after the catch, which, it's an interesting approach, but maybe that's the approach with Trevon Diggs is, like maybe he doesn't want to make these big physical tackles because he's afraid of getting hurt. But the problem is that that's been the narrative around him. I've seen a lot of analysts and a lot of fans kind of point out Trayvon saying he's soft and he's not playing physical. And, he's not playing like Jordan Lewis. And, I think that that's something that can be said about Jordan Lewis. Jordan Lewis has suffered a fair share of injuries over the past several seasons,
Yeah.
but he's easily the most physical cornerback on the roster, I think, in terms of going up and making a tackle. And,
He's
I
also
really
not the biggest dude. It's
exactly,
not like he's
so,
got the Donovan Wilson body and can just fly in there like a missile. He's
exactly.
pretty in there.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So my biggest, takeaway from this is I do think it's really become a mental issue in terms of softness and being focused on the wrong things in Dallas. And typically that comes down from coaching, but I don't even know if it's Mike McCarthy's fault in this situation. I'm completely on the side of wanting to move on from Mike McCarthy. And honestly, it's not even as much about this season as it was previous seasons. I wanted to move on from him, even though we had 12-5 seasons. It was the inability to keep going further and further in the playoffs. I didn't see any growth or any any promise in that regard. This season, I think, is just a nail in the coffin. But I don't. I actually, if I were to give Mike McCarthy any leeway or anything like that, it would actually be that this season was set up for him to fail. And I don't think that this is necessarily his fault the way this season is going. I don't think he's a great fit for what Dallas needs right now. And, that's not even on him. But, I'm more upset about the 3 straight 12-5 seasons and being unable to, get past the divisional round, especially last season too. I think the absolute implosion that happened in Green Bay as the number 2 seed in AT&T Stadium in the wild card, where you were supposed to win easily. I think they were the biggest favorites heading into that weekend, and they just didn't look prepared at all. And that's when I was ready to move on from him, because I think that team was built to, that team had a lot more talent on the roster, I felt like, on both sides of the football than this team does. And, but like either way, yeah, I think that they need a new head coach, but I am concerned, with the way Jerry Jones is talking to the media and the way things are going on, I think that the players will always think, if my owner can do all this kind of stuff, then it's obviously fine if I act this way, and,
Yeah.
it's a shame, and, it's gonna be interesting to see
I
see if a
think
head coach can
as
change
as
that.
much as we all soured on him by the time his time as a Cowboys player ended, Jalen Smith had a clear eye view, as he would say, when he
Yeah,
said, "If the owner ain't tripping, we good." And I think that
yeah.
is the mentality that exists in Dallas. Is as long as the owner is still okay with you, doesn't matter how you play, doesn't matter if you win, as long as this team is making him money, that's what he
I
cares about.
mean I mean, ask Ezekiel Elliott. That's the
Yeah,
perfect representation of this. Ezekiel Elliott, I truly wonder if he would have a spot on any roster right now at this point of the season. If I mean, let's say he got cut, like, right now, which they won't do because he's Ezekiel Elliott and Jerry Jones loves him. But if he got released, are we sure any team in the NFL is rushing to
I
sign
mean,
him? I'm not sure.
nobody signed him in free agency last year. The
Exactly,
Cowboys
exactly. No
got
one
him during the draft.
exactly, yeah. I mean, I think right now he would be on the verge of retiring if it
Yeah,
wasn't for the Cowboys and Jerry Jones.
and that's no disrespect to Ezekiel
Exactly, no
Elliott either.
disrespect
Like, I
to
mean,
what he's done in
we
Dallas, but
all love what he gave to the Cowboys, in his prime, but I mean, he's not that guy anymore.
like, I could argue that Jason Witten provided more for the team even in his last couple seasons when he could barely move and it looked like every move was hurting his body. I mean, he was still a reliable pass catcher, and, at least he brought some kind of leadership and, like a good a good locker room leader and character and all that. But really, it's Ezekiel Elliott's extremely slow at this point of his career.
Hmm.
I saw a tweet that said it was actually from Skip Bayless. I know we don't want to quote necessarily Skip Bayless a lot, but he said my nose runs faster than Zeke right now. And I was like, that's pretty funny because
That's pretty good.
it really looks like he's running through mud out there, and I just don't see any situation where he shouldn't be in the game over Hunter Lipke at this point in any situation, because at least Hunter Lipke has the explosion to turn a play that you think has nothing to do with him into something positive. And I think that I just it's crazy to me that people are still wanting Ezekiel Elliott to get more and more carries. I think it's such bias and delusion to what we saw from him and through those 4 years where he was among arguably the best running back in the NFL. And I think he had a tremendous career in Dallas, and it's a shame that he never led us to a Super Bowl because, he was a part of some really good teams, but we're just
Yeah,
at that point, where I think it's time to move on. But it's clearly proven that we're not going to move on from him anytime soon. If anything, just like Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones is going to let that contract just expire so he doesn't have to let go of him. It's
right.
going to be one of those situations where he doesn't have to feel as bad about it. He doesn't
Mhm.
have to have the conversation like, hey, I'm firing you. It's,
Right.
hey, I'm just not going to renew your contract. It's a little bit easier for him to say that, I feel like.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay the money to fire
Exactly.
him or to, the dead cap to cut him.
Yeah.
Speaking of moving on to looking around the NFL, looking at some teams that work and function and know what they're doing. It was a very, very interesting week outside of Cowboys land while we were waiting all day for Sunday night. Of course, it started Thursday night with the Rams upsetting the Vikings, which was definitely a surprise, but it also kind of felt like the Vikings were due for a game like this.
A little bit of robbery too. I'm not saying that they would have driven them to
A
score,
little
but
bit,
their face
little
mask.
bit, a lot of bit robbery.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold, face mask, his helmet's being turned sideways.
Yeah, it's the most blatant face mask ever. I actually think that he didn't react enough to it. If I would have been in his shoes, I would have probably thrown my helmet off and gotten
Yeah,
ejected because that was
yeah.
clear as day that was a face mask.
Uh, Elsewhere, there were, like we alluded to, the Lions just absolutely obliterated the Titans, which not the biggest surprise. The Titans aren't a very good team, but their defense was very, very good, and the Lions made them look not very good, which made me feel just slightly better about
Yeah.
what happened to the Cowboys defense. Um, Looking within the division, the Eagles were able to get a win over the Bengals, which was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought for sure the Bengals were going to finally pull it together, and that the Eagles would surely blow a game like this, and
Yeah.
didn't happen. Which, by the way, if the Eagles keep this up, Kellen Moore is a head coaching candidate in Dallas.
I I don't know if he can. I don't. I'll not get behind that.
I'm not advocating for or against it, but he's going to interview. If the Eagles keep this up and have a good season and they make the playoffs,
That's gonna have a lot of the fan base even more disinterested than
but
than.
it's going to be split though. It's gonna, like some people are going to be like,
Some
yeah,
people
we never should have got rid of him, and some people are going to be like, there's a reason we got rid of him.
Yeah, I know my dad, for starters, would be completely out on the Cowboys if that happened. He was a big anti-Kellen Moore guy.
I think it would be funny at the very least.
I mean, it would be
Speaking of
funny, but
alternate
I'm not.
universe Cowboys head coaches, Dan Quinn and his Commanders sit at the top of the NFC East by
Thanks
a
to
pretty
good
decent
old
margin.
Tyreek Stevenson.
Thanks to Tyreek Stevenson. Yeah, the Bears corner, Tyreek Stevenson, uh, taunting Commanders fans in the end zone on a Hail Mary play.
Their
Didn't
head coach
realize the play had
confirmed
started. And of all people to catch the Hail Mary, Cowboys legend Noah Brown, another player who I would say has the right mindset, has the mentality you want in this Dallas locker room that the Cowboys let go. And here he comes up with the game winner on a Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels, and the Commanders continue to have a pretty impressive lead in the NFC East. And honestly, I think they look like one of the better teams in the NFC as a whole right now.
I agree with that, especially too, because I feel like they've been getting carried a lot by their offense. I mean, like obviously their defense played well this game, but I mean, if their defense can get things going as well, then they're going to be a really tough team to beat. They kind of remind me of, it's hard to beat these electric rookie QBs because there's not a lot of tape on them. You know what I mean? It seems like it's harder for CJ Stroud this year than it was last year because teams now know how to defend him and they know how to, go up against him because there's more tape. And, it kind of felt that way for Dak Prescott too. It was very easy. It seemed like his rookie season because nobody had tape on him because he was a 4th-round pick and no one expected him to be playing that season. So it kind of came in as a surprise. And I feel like that's kind of what we're seeing now with Jaden Daniels. I think a lot of people thought that he would be a really good rookie, but I think he's surpassing expectations. I think the funniest part about that whole play is that the Bears head coach confirmed that Tyreek Stevenson, his role on that play was to box out Noah Brown.
Yeah.
And he ended up making the big touchdown grabs. So I think that that's pretty hysterical. Obviously we would have preferred to see the Bears win that game, being in the division, but I'm at the point now where I'm conceding that the Cowboys aren't going to win the division. So I'm not crossing my fingers hopeful that they make a division run. I think at best they're going to maybe be a wild card team at best. And that's assuming they really turn things around. Like that's at best.
Well, I mean, just in terms of looking at wild card spots, I mean, there's 3 wild card spots. The NFC North is probably going to make up 2 of those. Yeah. I mean, between the Lions, the Vikings, and
could be 3.
Packers,
it could
potentially be all 3 because the Bears are in a good spot right now. But most of those teams have not played each other yet. You figure they're probably going to beat each other up, but even then, Lions, Vikings, Packers are probably all have a very decent shot of one of them obviously being a division title winner, 2 of them probably being in a good spot for a wild card spot, and then beyond that, I mean, you look right now, the Falcons and the Buccaneers are in a bit of a 2-way race there. The Rams suddenly look alive. They could be competitive. The Cardinals got a win this week too over the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa coming back from his injury. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And the path to getting one of these wild card spots, it's not as open as it has been the last couple of years because the last couple of years it was like, well, the 7th seed in the NFC, it's going to be a not good team. This year, I think it's going to be, you're going to see some teams with winning records that don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think overall the NFC actually has a better conference this year than the AFC. Mm-hmm. I expected the AFC East to be a lot better than they are. It's just a Bills show at this point. I think
the Jets lost to the Patriots.
Yeah, I know.
The Patriots head coach 2 weeks ago said his players were soft, and then they go and beat Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams.
That's what they need, though. That's what they need in Dallas. They need Mike McCarthy to just come out straight up and be like, "This team sucks. They're soft. They need to play better." And maybe no, really, that's what they need Jerry Jones to say. Because if Jerry Jones came out and said this whole team is soft, I don't know what's going on out there on the field. These aren't the guys I paid. Then they'd really have some fire and then the prove them wrong. I mean, like that's what they need to say. But Yeah, no, I think, I think it's become this situation where the NFC is the better all around conference, but the Chiefs still run the league as far
Yeah,
as I'm concerned. And I think it's going to be Chiefs versus whoever comes out the NFC at this
yeah. No,
point.
I've said this before. This is my new like motto, and for the record, why I'm not as wasn't as frustrated. Not saying I wasn't frustrated, but wasn't as frustrated with those 3-12-5 seasons not going anywhere in the playoffs, because if you're in the AFC right now, you're competing for the opportunity to lose to the Chiefs in the conference championship game. And if you're
Yeah.
in the NFC, you're competing for the opportunity to lose to them in the Super Bowl.
Still though,
That's where you're at.
I still like. I know that I see RJ Ochoa saying this and blogging the boys and all these people saying that you guys wouldn't be satisfied with losing in the Super Bowl. Me personally, I would. Just seeing how they haven't been able to reach the hump. If they got to the Super Bowl and they lost to Patrick Mahomes, even if it was a blowout, even if they just got absolutely wiped on the floor, it was like the Seahawks and Broncos game, way back when. If it was awful, which I don't think it would be, but if it was awful, at least we could finally say we weren't one of like the 4 teams left in the NFC or in the NFL that hasn't made their conference championship in like over 20, 30 years, like it's at the point where I just want to, I just want to cross that hump, I want to finally get over that hill, that blockade. Cause then I feel like once they do that, there could maybe be some consistency in getting back to it. It just seems like there's this invisible wall that the Cowboys just can't get through. And that's, the divisional round.
Yeah, well, and like we were saying, they're going to have tough competition just to get into the playoffs, but they're going to have to go through a lot of really tough teams along the way to get there too. First up this week is they're going to play the Falcons, who look like one of the better teams in the NFC right now as well. Kirk Cousins has really started to settle in this Falcons offense. Kyle Pitts is starting to show signs of life. I know you're a Kyle Pitts guy. Bijan Robinson has started to really pop off. I know you're a Bijan Robinson guy. Even Drake London, who I did not think was going to be that good in this offense, he's Cousins' number one guy. And looking at this Falcons team, they're kind of riding high right now. They just like I said, got a win over Tampa Bay, who's their one real threat in the division. And Tampa Bay, I think, has generally looked solid this year. So beating them in Tampa is a big deal for the Falcons. And when I look at this matchup, when I looked at this game in preseason, I was super excited for this one not because of the Cowboys, the Falcons, whatever, but because it's Mike Zimmer versus Kirk Cousins. And everybody knows, it's no secret, Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins did not get along when they were with the Vikings. Zimmer hated Cousins. Cousins hated the fact that Zimmer treated him like garbage. And I really, really, really want Micah Parsons and Deron Bland back for this game for no reason other than I want Zimmer to have like actual players to work with in this grudge match against Kirk Cousins, because he's going to be throwing every trick he has in the book.
Yeah.
And having Micah Parsons and Deron Bland makes it easier to do that. And I just really, really, really want to see that chess match between Kirk Cousins. Like, he practiced against this defense every single day for, 3-4 years. And Zimmer is like, hey, I hate this quarterback. He's mentally soft. I know how to ruin his day. And I want to see that matchup at full strength.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Cowboys though. I actually think that they'll win this one. I think
they'll
that
win?
I do, yes. I think that on paper they shouldn't, but I think that it's just a game where like if the Cowboys lose this, then you can pretty much wrap a bow on their season. I feel like it's over, and you can kind of just move on from it. I think this is a must win at this point for the Cowboys, and I think they're going to have Micah and Deron Bland available. If they don't have both of those guys available, then my answer would change. But, that's not how life works. I can't just change it like that. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to bet that they play. I'm going to bet that Kirk Cousins makes a few mistakes. The Cowboys had the edge on Kirk Cousins while they played when he was a Redskin at the time. So, I think
Way back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the Cowboys win this one. But no, I think that the Falcons on paper have a better roster right now than the Cowboys, but I think the Cowboys find a way to pull it out.
I think you're smart in making that prediction, especially because a little bit before we started recording this Tuesday night, the NFL released their referee assignments for this game, for all the games for this week. And the Cowboys got Scott Novak for this game, and those who are not, complete football degenerate sickos like me and don't follow all the refs down to the T, you don't know. But Scott Novak is historically, he is very, very, very bad for the home team. Home team has a losing record when Scott Novak's calling the game. Pretty regardless of who's the favorite, what kind of teams are like that. So on that level, I'm like, oh yeah, the Cowboys should win this one because Kirk Cousins is always due for a game like that. Scott Novak is, a death knell for home teams, and the Cowboys are going to be trying to respond, and they love to respond after a loss under Mike McCarthy. Historically, they have done that. I still think the Falcons win this one just because, as I was saying in the last segment, I think this team has completely tuned them out. I don't think that there's any motivation for them to really, step up and play to their capability. I think they have the talent to win this game. I think the Falcons are the better roster, but I think the Cowboys have it in them to win this one. I just don't think that they're going to put forward the effort that it would take to win this game. It'll probably be close to where, Jerry can still sell tickets and say, hey, look, you want to come see us because we were, had so close to beating the Falcons. And that'll keep him happy with the players. But I see another L for the Cowboys coming up, which brings us to our predictions for Week 9. Before that, we're going to look at standings. Chris, you've fallen from the top spot. Brandon is in first place, and he's not even here. He doesn't even get to enjoy it and revel in it, but he's in first with a record of 69-37. Very nice. Chris is right behind him, nipping on his heels.
It's going to change, though. It's going to change. You know why it's not going to change? Because he's not here, and he always picks after me, so there will be no cheating this time.
There will be no cheating. But Chris is 67-39, only 2 games behind. And, I took a bit of a hit this week. I zigged a little too many times. Story of my life.
Yeah, no, sometimes you just got to not overthink it. You just got to go with what makes sense.
Majority of the ones that I was wrong on were like one-score games, like very, very close. Like the Packers almost lost their game. There were, I think we all picked the Jets. That was a bit of a surprise, but the ones that I lost were, it wasn't like they got completely blown out. There was at least some validation that I was on to something. So I'm going to keep zigging with our Week 9 predictions. Right. But we're starting with Texans and the Jets, and I'm zigging here because I'm taking the Jets to win this one. I think I've said it, a million times now when we do these predictions. I think the Texans are going to take a step back. All of their wins except for one this season have been by one score. They've come very, very close to blowing things. And, of course, as we mentioned, they're now going to be without Trevon Diggs on top of already missing Nico Collins. Jets have a pretty good defense. Their offense is bound to figure it out one of these weeks. I think the Jets get the win here over the Texans.
Well, I'm a zig with you because I'm going to go with the Jets as well. Because I agree the Texans are missing some big players, and the Jets are also kind of in a situation where they have to win, or else they're really going to start falling out of playoff contention. And I think that they're really feeling the pressure because they've made these moves. They fired Robert Saleh, and they brought in Devontae
which did
Adams.
Nothing, by the way.
Exactly.
They haven't won since.
They also traded for Devontae Adams, which so far has done nothing for them. So. Yeah, I think at some point they got to get it together just for the sanity of all Jets fans and their own locker room. I saw that Aaron Rodgers just tweeted like a couple. I saw Adam Schefter tweeted just a little bit ago that he's got some diet that he's doing this week that's different than the rest of his schedule to try and change things up. I don't know, but I'm not saying I buy into all his theories, but I got to take Aaron Rodgers on this one.
Yeah, little extra ayahuasca on the Quinoa Bowl this week.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got the Buffalo Bills hosting the Miami Dolphins, who do have Tua Tagovailoa back, but and he looked good this past week, but the Cardinals were able to beat him. I think the Bills will beat him. They're looking pretty unstoppable right now. Are you in agreement with me, or are you going to zig from my zig?
I'm in agreement. I would have taken I actually took the Dolphins whenever they played back in Miami, but I can't take the Dolphins in Buffalo. I know it's not December yet. It's not freezing, but I can take the Dolphins to beat this hot Bills team in Buffalo. So I'm going the Bills.
Next up, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals have burned me a lot this year. Their defense is in shambles. Joe Burrow doesn't look like himself. But they got to beat the Raiders, right?
Yeah. I can't. It doesn't matter how bad the Bengals look. I can't take the Raiders over them. It even got to the point too where I just picked up the Bengals defense in fantasy just because I didn't really have a lot of great options. But at some point, like they got to be able to do well against the Raiders offense.
Yeah, if you get cooked by Gardner Minshew,
yeah, exactly.
Dan Quinn's defense got cooked by Gardner Minshew not too many years ago, but that was with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and the Raiders.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of weapons outside of Brock Bowers.
Yeah, they got Brock Bowers and
that's about it.
That's it. Yeah, that may be the one team that has a worse receiver core than the Cowboys right now.
Yeah, seriously.
Next up, we've got the Chargers taking on the Cleveland Browns, who look to have new life. They have a new quarterback with Jameis Winston, and Nick Chubb, of course, is back and playing. I don't know. I'll let you go first.
I'm going Browns. I'm going to take the mojo before you take it. I think you're going to take them as well. I know that me and you, or I know that you question this and you questioned my ethics around this, but I predicted the Browns to upset the Ravens this past week because I thought Jameis Winston was going to cook. And I'm a full believer that this team is just a completely different led team right now. They have some enthusiasm at the quarterback position. They just got the soul of their offense back, and he's slowly been the Browns have slowly been increasing Nick Chubb's workload over the past several weeks, and I think right now that I think that this Browns team, they have a good defense. I think that they'll be able to contain Justin Herbert, and the Chargers don't really have a lot of great skill positions around Justin Herbert, and I think that they're going to be able to run the football. And I think that Jameis Winston is going to, even though he may have a couple negative plays, he's for sure going to have some crazy positive plays as well. That's just the kind of player he is. It's funny. I just saw a post-game interview with him, and he said, if I make good decisions, I know I'm a great football player. I was like, hey, listen, that plays a massive part in it. So if he can make the good decisions, he can make the good decisions, and I do think that he can be a good football player. I think he'll make more good decisions than bad decisions in that game.
Yeah, and you've got to be a better decision maker than the last quarterback for the Browns just by default.
Yeah, on the field and off the field.
I do love Jameis Winston. He's a really, really fun, goofy person. I think he's a really good fit for this offense. That said, he is always due for a couple big mistakes. I think this Chargers defense, I'm a real believer in this Chargers defense. I think they're going to push him into making some mistakes. I think this Chargers offense, they're not pretty, but they get the job done. I think this Jim Harbaugh team is slowly coming together, and really, I think they're just about to really hit their stride. So I am taking the Chargers, but I would not even be the least bit surprised if the Browns pull this one out, because this is probably the one I had the toughest time picking for this week. But I am going with the Chargers, just with that caveat of it's going to be a close one, I think. Another game that should be a close one, but for very different reasons, is the Patriots and the Titans. Toilet Bowl candidate of the year. Where are you with this barn burner? I'm going with the Titans because, as we've mentioned a couple of times here, I didn't think we'd talk this much about the Titans, to be honest, but they got a really good defense. They got blown up by the Lions, but they still got a good defense. They're playing well. Mason Rudolph has come in at quarterback, and he has been an upgrade over Will Levis. Not great, but he's someone who at the very least is not going to shoot you in the foot over and over and over. I think against a team like the Patriots, Tennessee can get the job done and get the win here.
I'm going to go with the Patriots. I think that Drake May's the real deal. I'm a believer in Drake May. I think he's really good. I think that he plays better than Mason Rudolph does, or Will Levis. If Will Levis comes in, I definitely think that he makes better decisions than Will Levis if he gets in the game. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Patriots in this one.
I don't hate it, but we'll see. Drake May should be the best quarterback on that field, regardless of who plays for the Titans.
Yeah.
You never know with rookie quarterbacks. Speaking of rookie quarterbacks, next up we've got the most impressive one so far this year, Jaden Daniels taking on the Giants. Are you picking the Giants? I'm picking the Commanders. I don't think anyone's picking the Giants this week.
I'm picking the Commanders.
Yeah. Not to steal your thunder, but I feel like that's one where that'd be a massive upset. Next up is the Saints taking on the Panthers. Saints have not been good since they crushed the Cowboys, but Panthers haven't been good at all.
Yeah, they got to be better than the Panthers. So
they got to be. Yeah, I mean, you're taking the Saints. Yeah,
I have to.
I'm taking the Saints. If they lose to the Panthers, they're you gotta blow that team up right now. Like, you can't even wait till the end of the season. Something's broken, but I think they will win. I think they'll keep hope alive for just a little bit longer. Speaking of hope, next up is the Denver Broncos. They're feeling good. They're 5-3. Bo Nix has put some good games together, but he's done it against.
I was about to say, I saw that Bo Nix is the number 9th quarterback in fantasy right now. That's pretty nuts.
He's put up good games, but it's been against not very good teams. This week he plays a good team. He has to face the Baltimore Ravens. I'm picking the Ravens. I think this is an easy one.
Yeah, I'm picking the Ravens. I'm not taking the upset this week.
Yeah.
I thought the Ravens were due for an upset, which was a big reason why I picked them. But I picked against them last week. But I think that now that they got that upset, they're gonna lock in.
Yeah. Speaking of upsets, I'm taking the upset in this next one of Jaguars versus the Eagles. I think Doug Peterson comes back into Philadelphia, gets the win over his old team that fired him just a couple years after winning the Super Bowl. Jaguars were close this past week against the Packers. That was one that I zigged and I almost got paid for it, but I'm taking the Jags this week. They're going to be able to beat the Eagles. They're going to make Kellen Moore's head spin and save us Cowboys fans from having to endure him as head coach, and they'll get the win this week.
You know how badly I want to agree with you, but I'm in too close of a race for first right now. I can't risk it on something like that. I would be the happiest man ever if that came true. But I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think it makes more sense. I saw Brian Thomas isn't even guaranteed to be playing. If he doesn't play, then I think that's a massive loss. He's been easily their best offensive weapon. I'm going to go with the Eagles. But I hope I'm wrong on that one.
That's a fair bet. But, I got to make up some ground. So
no, I feel you.
We're taking Hail Marys and hoping Noah Brown is back there.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Bears and Tyreek Stevenson, they'll be taking on Kyler Murray and the Cardinals next. In Arizona. I really don't know where to go with this one.
I feel like it could go either way, but after a heartbreaking loss like that, I feel like the Bears got to turn it around after that. I feel like it's only right to pick the Bears. I think it could go either way. It wouldn't shock me also, but I'm going to go with the Bears.
That's kind of where I'm leaning, and I think I am going to go with the Bears. But this Cardinals team has been so hard to pick this year. I mean, they upset the 49ers. They crushed the Rams, but then they've had some losses where it's like, how do you lose that one? I'm going with the Bears, but I don't feel really good about it. This should be a coin toss one. Next game should be a really good one. Detroit taking on the Packers, playing in Lambeau Field. Mm-hmm. What do you got here?
I got the Lions. I wouldn't say I'd love because I don't like the Packers, but it'd be intriguing to see a Packers win here. Kind of bring them back in the mix in that division and kind of make things interesting. But the Lions just look like they could be the best team in the NFL outside of the Chiefs right now. So I'm going to go with the Lions on this one.
Yeah, I'm going Lions too. I think they're looking pretty unstoppable right now. I'll hang my hat on Dan Campbell and Sam Laporta, two guys that I've stuck my neck out for in the past and did all I could to will those guys to Dallas. Did not work out. But the Lions are great, and I'm going to chalk that up as a win for me, and I'm going to chalk it up as a win for them this week over the Packers, taking control of the battle for the NFC North. Going down to the NFC West, we've got next up the Rams going into Seattle to take on the Seahawks. And Rams – there were rumors about they're going to trade Cooper Kupp, they might trade Matthew Stafford, and then they get the win, and suddenly it's like, oh no, we're keeping everybody, we're turning this thing around just like they did last year, making a playoff push. Are you buying it, or do you think the Seahawks can get the win here after a tough loss last week?
I'm buying the Rams on this game. Having Puka back, having having Puka back, having Cooper Kupp back. I think that makes their offense much more explosive and versatile. Yeah, I'm gonna take them in this situation. DK is not for sure playing. I mean, he's trying to, but I think even if DK plays, I think the Rams are gonna get this one. I think they're a better coach team as well. I'm a big Sean McVay fan, so yeah, I think the Rams will have
Yep.
the advantage in this game.
I was originally going to go with that pick, but I'm changing it to the Seahawks for two reasons. Mike McDonald, the rookie head coach, and the defensive play caller there, he made a career out of being able to shut down Shanahan tree offenses like Kyle Shanahan, obviously, and then Sean McVay. I think he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve in this one. And on top of that, it's in Seattle, which, as we know, is even when the Seahawks aren't really playing that great, it's a hard place to play. I think those two factors combine for the Seahawks to get the win here. But like you said, there's a lot of momentum riding behind the Rams right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it out.
Yeah, those are good points.
Yeah. Next up, we've got the Colts, who just announced on Tuesday that they're benching Anthony Richardson after a really, really, really bad day. Joe Flacco will be their starter, but they're taking on the Minnesota Vikings, who have to be just fuming mad after that face mask no call, and also not for nothing have a really, really darn good defense. So Joe Flacco against that Brian Flores defense, Sam Darnold against a Colts defense that's been up and down throughout this season. Where are you going with this matchup?
I'm gonna go with the Vikings. I think they have a better team, and it's one of those situations where I think they'll be really pissed off and motivated heading into this week because I'm sure they feel robbed. And there's not a lot of leeway to keep dropping games if they want to win the division with the way that the Lions are looking right now. So I think that the Vikings will come through with this one.
Yeah, I agree there for all the things you just said. Joe Flacco is always a wild card, though. And I'm really excited to see a second straight year where Joe Flacco goes on a playoff run after replacing the starter midseason. I think that would be great content. But I don't think it starts this week. I think that defense is just a little too good. Joe Flacco isn't exactly the type of quarterback you want against a team that blitzes every other play. I think it'll be close, but I think Minnesota comes out with the win, which leads us to picking the Monday Night Football game, which is Buccaneers facing off against the Chiefs. I don't think we're picking against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are like that team. It's like every week when we do this, we pick against the Panthers and we pick the Chiefs. Like we're not picking the Panthers to win. We're not picking the Chiefs to lose.
I'm glad we don't do like lock of the week, because if we did, my lock every single week would be the Chiefs. Like it doesn't matter who they play. I can't see them losing. I think that they'll probably end up losing like a game just because that's how the NFL works, and they'll drop a game that we're not expecting. But there won't be a single week this entire season. As long as Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback, there won't be a single week that I pick against them.
I already went on record and saying I'm picking the Chargers to beat them the next time they play, so I'm gonna hold true to that once we get there. But I mean, I don't see myself picking against them before then. I do think if all the weeks, this might be the week because Tampa Bay has a sneaky good defense, but I'm not confident enough to pick that. So I'm sticking with the Chiefs. I have a sneaking suspicion Brandon will also pick the Chiefs in that one because
so that'll be your make some ground.
Yeah, you don't pick against the Chiefs unless you absolutely have to. But that does it for our predictions this week. On a light scheduling note, we will not be recording next week. For those who, as we've mentioned, all throughout, we record these the night before, so we're recording these Tuesday nights. This upcoming Tuesday will be the election, and so in the spirit of civic engagement, we want to encourage people to go out and vote, make sure that your voice is heard, and in that same spirit, we won't be recording an episode, but we will, of course, be tallying up the records on our predictions and maybe have a new leader because Chris and Brandon are locked in a tight race. And who knows, maybe yours truly comes from last place and gets into first place with a solid week of zigging, finally paying off for him. But as all good stories are, you'll have to wait just a little bit longer to find out where we're standing. And we'll see you after the Cowboys have probably lost to the Falcons, although Chris is holding out hope. So until next time, for Chris Halling, for David Howman, myself, I said my name. That's who I am, in case you didn't know. For the Cowboys, this is the Writer's Block. And as always, even when they're losing, even when all hope seems lost, you still got to sign off with, how about them Cowboys?